I mean, one thing I definitely have a strong feeling about or
Mm,
opinion about is naming discoveries after either yourself or someone you love.
yeah,
I've seen that happen with exoplanets when
sure.
someone has named a planet. And I guess the problem there is you lose objectivity. So it's
Yeah,
a slightly different case, but um, you're it's very difficult if you name something after your wife or your
sure.
child. My daughter Rosie always wants me to name the next planet I find after her. I can't, because if I do that, how am I supposed to look you in the eye and say, "Oh, you know that planet I discovered after you"? Turns out it's not there.
Oh
Turns out
God.
it's a fake planet,
Right. Or
and
if some,
it's famous for being a fake. So you can't proceed objectively as a scientist, which is our
right.
job. So I try to be very conscious of that aspect of it. But obviously with JWST, I mean, a lot of us are now trying to avoid actually saying James Webb and
Yeah.
just call it JWST, and we're maybe even calling it the
Yeah.
Just Wonderful Space Telescope or something in corridors, trying to come up with the
Yeah.
names. And it looks like, with the rate decision, it's not going to go away. So we're going to have
Yeah.
to figure out how to get through this.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. I think so the NASA History Office did do a report on James Webb as a historical figure, and I think it's interesting because the question that the historians were looking at was not the question of whether or not they should, whether or not a person is responsible for all the ills of the past, but they
Mm,
were looking at, is there evidence that James Webb was an active participant in the Lavender Scare, which is a different kind of question, right? Because we were talking earlier about the historical record. Historians can't do the work if the data is not there.
yeah.
And like Carl Sagan said, the absence of evidence isn't the evidence of absence. And so it's a different question to say, does this name reflect our community values? Is there a community consensus on this person that we want to honor?
Yeah.
The question was not that. The question was instead, is there evidence? Is there historical evidence? And that's what they were in charge of looking at. So that's a really different approach.
Right. And it makes me wonder, I mean, you're a historian, so you think about the past,
Hmm.
but you're also living in the present.
I am.
And so,
Unfortunately.
unfortunately, and so I'm kind of curious, do you have particular insight into how history will remember now? Especially, let's say, in terms of SETI in
Yeah,
particular, it's some things have changed, right?
sure.
Our attitudes towards SETI have changed. The way we're funding SETI has changed.
Yeah.
Um, is there something happening right now that maybe we're sleeping and we're not aware of, that historians will look back
Yeah.
and maybe, in your opinion, think this was an important transition that's happening in this current era?
Yeah. Did you mean in SETI specifically?
Well, or even broader
Because
than
there's
that,
like
but
some
that's
stuff happening that historians are probably going to be interested in right now, like
with
war in Ukraine and
okay. I mean, let's at least keep
or
it
is
in
this
astronomy,
COVID thing?
because of course there's also the world is falling apart around us.
Yeah,
So I
like
can
there's some
imagine.
stuff that historians might be interested in.
Good point. I mean, in terms of, are there things happening
Yeah,
in our search for, let's just say, life in the universe, to
sure.
keep it
Yeah.
narrow but broader than just SETI
Yeah.
alone?
So I'll preface by saying that what you have asked me is like the most taboo thing that you can ask a historian. We are not supposed to do that. We are not supposed to extrapolate and be. We have a slur in our community called presentism, which is
Okay.
so I'm
Excuse
not
my
meant to do
ignorance of that
this.
term. Yeah.
But for the sake of the podcast, I'll try to answer politely. I think that really just the dawn of the exoplanetary science era with all the new telescopes we have, I think that that's a major shift in astronomy.
Mm.
And I think that if I was a historian 50, 100 years from now, I would be very fascinated in how that changes the character of astronomy. And so for me, that's what I would want to look at. If I was in 50 years a student at Oxford looking at books in the library,
Yeah.
I would probably want to look at exoplanetary science.
I mean, just to maybe go a little bit more narrow,
Sure.
the funding example might be a good one to pick
Oh,
on,
sure.
because
Well, yeah.
we have seen something shift there, right?
Oh,
So you go way back to ancient Greek
yeah.
times, and patronage of scientists and artists was a common way
Oh,
of
yeah.
funding
Oh, yeah,
these
yeah.
kind of endeavors. And then we switched gradually. It's gone back and forth, but
Hmm.
we think about the era of Frank Drake and
Oh,
SETI,
sure.
and it was a federally funded project. And
Yes.
now it seems like we're cycling back the other way. So do
Yeah.
you see that cycling of, now we have billionaires
Oh,
funding
yeah.
SETI programs and space research? Is
Well,
this a cycle, or do you see this as more of a trend?
yeah. So I wouldn't say it's a cycle, because we society doesn't work like that. But so we can't predict what it's going to be in the future. But I will say that throughout human history, really, really wealthy people like to leave their mark. You're right that in art, this is I can tap into my art historical past here. What that looked like in the past is you would have the kind of the wealthy elite would, commission artists to, there'd be paintings where a person would have a portrait done with many of the trappings of their wealth. Like they'd be wearing their, nicest coat. They'd have big bowls of fruit, of ripe fruit, which was very difficult to come by. And this was a way of kind of signaling their elite status.
Right.
And I think it's pretty evident if you look at the kind of the elite of our contemporary world, people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Yuri Milner, Mark Zuckerberg. These people, what are they investing in? They're investing in space exploration, in SETI, in big space projects,
Or even monuments
Oh,
to a certain degree.
Yeah,
Come
right.
back to that
Look at
phrase,
the
yeah.
Tesla Roadster is in some ways a monument to
Yeah.
Elon Musk, is it
Mhm.
not? Right. And so I think that's interesting to look at. And yeah, for sure. If I might not even wait for history to pass much longer. I might,
You're done with
I
this
might
now.
do like a very a nearsighted history on the shift in funding in SETI and in the space sciences, because I think that's very, very interesting, and for sure people will be paying close attention to that.
I know I guess we're kind of wrapping up in time, but one thing it's a big question, so I'm not sure how I would answer this, but I wanted to throw it to you as someone who thinks about the human interaction with science, and especially the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Why are we searching? Like, fundamentally, why is that? We often, we understand scientifically why we answer lots of questions. So if we're trying to understand why did the Big Bang happen, or where did galaxies come from, when did the first stars form, those are teaching us about how the universe works at a very fundamental level. One might criticize, I'm definitely in the camp that I love looking for life, but one might criticize that, looking for life, it's just another form of chemistry. Chemistry happens all over the earth, all over the universe. The only uniqueness about this chemistry is that we happen to be this type of chemistry. And so it's almost egotistical to go through the list of grand scientific questions and say the greatest question in the universe, which, some people would say this, the greatest question is, are we alone? The greatest question is whether this particular type of chemistry of, one capable of Darwinian evolution, however you want to define life, recurs elsewhere. And is it an egotistical question? Or is this something that's fundamental to the human condition, that it's something that we have been asking this question since as long as we've been asking questions?
Yeah. So I think absolutely the latter. I don't think it's egotistical at all. I think it's very human. You and I were discussing this a little bit earlier, but I think that we are a social species. We seek connection with each other. We oftentimes seek connection with other worlds. I mean, there is world history, global history for a reason. We don't stay inside our isolated little cultures. We like to interact with one another. We've been doing this throughout our whole history. We have expanded across the world. First the Bering Strait, then colonialism. I mean, this is something that humans have been doing for a long, long time. And I think it's just kind of in our DNA. I think that we want to find friends. We want to find people to trade with. We want to, we're lonely. It's what we do. We're very social. If a non-social species had evolved intelligence and technology, perhaps they wouldn't be interested in this, what we consider the most important question. It's not the most important question. It's the most important question to us. And I think that, there's evidence that we have been thinking about this for millennia. Steve Dick, a historian of science, formerly the chief historian at NASA, has written about this, that even in ancient Greece, the early atomists were thinking about the plurality of worlds. And, there are dozens of examples throughout our history where we're looking up at the sky and wondering, is that another world out there? Are there people just like me? Are they different? How might they be different? We're very curious about the other.
So it's just a product of the fact we are individuals, part of a species, rather than, let's say, you can imagine a species, a hypothetical alien species that was just like a fungus almost that took over the entire planet, and there were no individuals. It was just a single globular thing. And for it, the sense of being lonely wouldn't really make any sense. Right. So maybe we're never going to hear from them.
Probably
we don't have
not.
to worry about that too much. Okay.
Would we want to?
Let's just finish, because I know you're working on a book. So I just want to give you a chance to mention. I know
Sure.
you're working on a book, but you're
That's
struggling
right,
to work
yeah.
on a book because of your injury. But maybe just finish off telling us what you're working on right now.
Yeah, so I am working on a book. I'm hoping it will come out sometime in the next year, but I have had a little bit of a hiccup with my hands injury. I'm not sure how to type now, but it's going to be on the history of the early SETI community, particularly in the formation of the relationships between SETI scientists in the U.S. and USSR. And it's a grand story about communicating with the other and what that looks like and what that has looked like throughout human history. How do we communicate with people or beings that are very different from us, and what does that look like? Has that sometimes meant American to Soviet? Has that sometimes meant humanist to STEM field? And looking at all of these interdisciplinary, intercontinental and interplanetary attempts at conversation in the 1960s and 70s.
I love that. I love the fact that we have, in a way, attempted alien communication, and it's across the Iron Curtain, and
Yeah.
that is, in a way,
It's
the
just too good
closest
not to
analogy.
write about it, right?
Yeah, I love that. So let me thank you again, Dr. Rebecca Charbonneau. Thank you for joining us. Look out for the book, and thanks again. This was a fascinating conversation.
Thanks so much, David. Glad to be on.